Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we have a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten because, man, oh man, I had to push the show back an hour. I actually originally wanted to go live at 8 o'clock, and then just had so much happen with the games today. Really wanted to dig in and make sure I had good analysis for you guys on that. And then in addition to that, we had more rumors kind of going out there being talked about, and I know it's going to be another loaded show tomorrow night with me and Burke breaking down the NCAA bracket and everything. So I was like, I don't want to try to put this stuff off. I want to make sure I get you all the right information. So if you're on the East Coast, 10 o'clock at night, I apologize. I know I'm coming on late. I know you're like, JR, man, can't stay up till 10. I got it. Don't worry. This is posted on podcast after the fact. So you guys can wake up, before church tomorrow, maybe after church, whatever you do, you can go check it out over there. And then if if you are somebody that does like to watch this live and you aren't able to catch it because it is so late, I apologize for that. But I just wanted to make sure I had good, accurate information that I wanted to give you all tonight. So I did some digging, tried to do my best to get as best of the information as I could, and we're going to go from there. So first, let's start with the games, right? The games were fantastic today. Again, I didn't even have time to make graphics for you guys. I apologize. But Wisconsin wins 77-74 over Michigan State. This was an awesome game. This was epic. This was everything you wanted between the rematch of Wisconsin and Michigan State. This is a game where I give a whole lot more credit to Wisconsin than I take away for Michigan State. Michigan State played well for large amounts of this game. Wisconsin played well for pretty much this entire game, but somebody had to come out the winner, and this was a game where Michigan State got behind, and at the end, they couldn't really hit their shots that they needed to hit to get back into the game, and Wisconsin did hit their shots to keep the lead. It seemed like every single time Michigan State got back into it. I mean, this was high level basketball, some of the highest level basketball you're going to see this season between these two teams. I've been saying it all year. Wisconsin is a Final Four caliber team. If you watch this game and you didn't think that after watching this, like, I don't know what you watched. I don't know what else you want Wisconsin to do. This Wisconsin team has adjusted. They've gotten better, and that was the most epic thing about this game is that Michigan State has got better throughout the year as well, right? There was a lot of people saying, "Oh, Michigan State can't win it all because they can't hit threes or anything like that." Well, Jace Richardson today went 4 for 5, so feel pretty good about that they have a sharpshooter on their team now. He's shooting nearly 40% on the season. He's doing a fantastic job. I think with Michigan State having him, his emergence, and everything else on the offensive end, some of those concerns that you have um, about the offense and stuff is alleviated a little bit. Now, Michigan State still going to be a 2 seed. They're not going to be a 1 seed after this. I don't think that winning the Big Ten tournament would have really impacted their seeding all that much anyway. We'll talk more about that in the last segment when we talk about the bubble teams and everything. But there was like that's kind of one of the interesting things is some people think, oh, well, this team's no longer a 1 seed, or oh, this team's a 2 seed now. I don't think it changes that easily just based off 1 or 2 games in a conference tournament. I just not seen that be what happens in the past. So I'm not going to dwell too much on it. But anyway, I want to start with Wisconsin because Wisconsin made key plays in this game down the stretch in order to give them the win. John Tonji, he deflected. He had a deflection in the final possession. Carter Gilmore, he had a crucial block at the end of the game, which was a game changer. The poke out by John Tonji there in the final possession. Some people were saying it could have been a foul, could have been whatever. I mean, it looked like he got all ball to me. So the way I look at it, he got all ball. And even though Wisconsin had trouble hitting their free throws there at the end of the game, this was still a response by them that ultimately got them the win. John Tonji went 12 for 12 free throws in the game. Went 0 for 2 in his final 2 free throws, which would have iced the game. Which would have iced the game for Wisconsin in this game. Instead, he ices it by poking the ball out on a Jeremy Fears, half-court shot that he probably had more time to go, but I think he was concerned he was going to get fouled when the other team was up 3. But, I was kind of surprised Wisconsin didn't do that, but at the same time, it was also like, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder how, that does seem like a little bit of a gamble to me. I'd probably still end up doing it because every time I've seen it happen, it seems to go the defense's way, but you never know. The depth of this game was huge for Wisconsin. Wisconsin, they like Michigan State made one of their final 7 field goals in this game. That's not how we've seen Michigan State close out games recently. Wisconsin had the depth to go up against this Michigan State team the entire time. Michigan State played, what was it, 10 different players? 11. They played 11 different players in this game. Now, 2 of them, that being Frankie Fiddler and Xavier Booker, had 9 and 4 minutes played, but still, Wisconsin went 10 guys deep in this game. Amos was the only one with single digit minutes. He had 7. The next one was Nolan Winter, who had 12, but at the same time, you're not going to be putting Nolan Winter in there all that much when he's in foul trouble. And Carter Gilmore is playing the way that he is. Carter Gilmore in this game was absolutely fantastic. 10 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks for him. Just an outstanding performance from Carter Gilmore. Not only that, but shooting 3-pointers as well, 2 for 3 shooting in this game. That's fantastic. I mean, this is the type of performance you need from somebody to push you over the top and get you into that next echelon to help your team be what the ceiling of the team is, and that's what Carter Gilmore gave them in this game. I don't think Michigan State was as prepared for it. I think that they were locking in more on guys like Tanji there down the stretch, so to have somebody else come in, make an impact offensively, it was absolutely huge for Wisconsin in this game, not just for making those plays, but also the depth, the impact late into the game. It really was, something that helped Wisconsin hold Michigan State to being 1 for 7 from the field after the fact. Michigan State did struggle with some free throws down the stretch. I felt like if they could have made those, it would have been better. But at the same time, Michigan State also got the rebound in a couple of those situations. So Michigan State getting the rebound, they had the opportunities. They just didn't always capitalize on them. And of course, Wisconsin, great job of taking care of the ball in this game. They averaged 9 turnovers per game against one of the best defenses they'll see all season long. They only had 7 turnovers. Just a fantastic job from Wisconsin. Overall, all around, I mean, the fundamental focus, everything that they're doing, the unselfish basketball, it's just Wisconsin's a really, really fun team to watch right now. On the flip side, Michigan State, close game. It was tight. I think it was well played by both sides. In particular, like Michigan State, I don't think they were bad down the stretch. I think that 1 for 7 obviously is not what you want to be, but I felt like they got some shots that they could have made. I mean, they were contested shots. It was still good defense by Wisconsin, but there were also opportunities they had during the game, like Xavier Booker dropping the ball a couple times on passes. Like there was just stuff like that, like those little moments that so much affect the game because of how small and how impactful they can be because of the margin of error in this game. I'm not by no means am I blaming Xavier Booker or anything like that. Those are just the ones that kind of pop in my mind when I think about this stuff. It's the little things that matter. It's the little things that matter. Foul trouble in this game. They had 4 different guys with 3 fouls or more. You had Jackson Kohler had 3, Jeremy Fears Jr. and Jaden Akins had 4, or I apologize, 5. Jace Richardson had 3, and then Cohen Carr had 3 in this game as well. Jackson Kohler, he only played 16 minutes in this game, but still with only 16 minutes, he still got 7 rebounds. He was second on the team with the most rebounds. Carson Cooper had the most with 10, and I mean, that I think that really hampered Michigan State in this one, that they didn't have Jackson Kohler for large stretches of this game. He basically wasn't able to play the entire first half because of his foul trouble. And I think that really impacted them. It was one of the reasons why Wisconsin was able to get up and be up 37-33 there at the end of the first half. And I think that's, Jackson Kohler has been such a revelation for this Michigan State front court to really help them out in a number of ways. His rebounding, his offense, there's so many different things that he does that helps out this front court. And for him to be able to come in and do those things, it's imperative that he plays more than 16 minutes in a game. And that was what they got out of him in this one because of foul trouble. Now, Jackson Kohler needs to do better, not foul guys, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, this was a very good learning experience, if nothing else, for Michigan State as they go into the NCAA tournament, where you're not going to have any more learning experiences. If you learn, you better learn quick, so that way you can make sure you win the game. The depth advantage, it was there for Michigan State for parts of the game, but also there at the end. Like I said, only 1 for 7 shooting there at the end. We'll see how Michigan State learns from this. We'll see how they bounce back. But Michigan State probably going to be a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. We'll see what they can do from there. And Wisconsin moves on for the second year in a row to the Big Ten tournament championship game. Should be fun as we see them go up against Michigan, because Michigan won 81-80 against Maryland in this game. Absolutely amazing game, back and forth. Michigan got up, and we thought, oh, okay, well, this is the Michigan team that got up against Purdue and kept that lead, actually extended that lead. But Maryland, not Purdue. Maryland was able to come back in this one and really make it a thrilling game down the stretch. Sorry, I had my heater on there, and that was really hot. But it just great college basketball all around. Both teams were doing some really cool things, really making things happen. I do need to pull up my stats here so I make sure I reference the correct numbers for you guys. I do need to reference, Danny Wolf, 21 points in this game. Vlad Golden, 25 points. The big man synergy down low was just unbeatable for Michigan in this game. There were so many times where Danny Wolf got the ball, found Vlad right away, and Vlad had an open dunk, an open layup, an open lane to get to the rim for a scoring opportunity. I mean, Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden showed the 7-footer combo in this game, that it can be so deadly, that people were so concerned about to begin the year. And they've shown it before. It's not like this is the only time it's happened, but in this game, it was really on display. Whew. See, that's the thing, guys. I put all this time off and coming on, and then I get in trouble because I start yawning on the podcast. Sorry about that. Trey Donaldson, he was heroic there at the end of the game. That play to use Nimari Burnett as a decoy to pull Gillespie away. If you watch the game, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, go back and watch it. It's the final play. Trey Donaldson inbounds the ball to Vlad Golden. Nimari Burnett came across the middle as kind of a backup. Gillespie bit on the backup to give Trey Donaldson just enough room to pass the ball to Vlad Golden and then sprint up the court, get all the way to the lane. He is so fast that Derek Queen and them, they could not even react in time. They contested the shot, but not well enough, as Trey Donaldson at full speed was able to just get down the court as quickly as he could and make it happen. The rebounding edge in this game was absolutely huge for Michigan. Michigan had 47 rebounds. Maryland only had 18 rebounds in this game. It was really, really strange to see. I mean, Julian Reese had 5 rebounds. Derek Queen had 3 rebounds. Overall in this game, Danny Wolf comes in as the rebounding leader with 14 rebounds. Vlad Golden had 10. On top of that, just fantastic effort from both teams, in a number of ways, but especially in the rebounding category. It was all Michigan getting those rebounds. And again, we saw another good game by Roddy Gale. Roddy Gale in this one had 9 points, 4 of 8, 1 of 2 from 3, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. He did have 2 turnovers in this game, but what Roddy Gale is able to do by getting to the rim, even when he doesn't convert, his guys know him well enough, and his guys get well enough position that they can come in and they can clean it up. And so just Roddy Gale's ability to get to the rim, his ability to put his back to the basket and work on a guard, it's become very valuable for this Michigan team if he can continue to do it. And we see why Dusty May felt like Roddy Gale fit into this team so well. Roddy Gale earned himself 28 minutes in this game. Every single one of those was earned. Every single one of those was deserved. He played more than Nimari Burnett. He played more than Will Cheddar, almost as much as Reuben Jones did. Reuben Jones in this game, by the way, he did some things on defense that helped out as well. He did eventually foul out, unfortunately for him, but he was in there being aggressive the entire game too. And at the end of the day, it was very balanced between Trey Donaldson, Roddy Gale, Vlad Golden. Danny Wolf, Reuben Jones to a certain extent. He only had 2 points, but some of the movement and stuff that he was able to do on offense was helpful as well. Obviously, not to the extent of like a Danny Wolf or Vlad Golden, but you get what I'm saying. He was there on offense and he was helping in a number of ways. Michigan, everybody on the team but Will Cheddar that played had 2 turnovers or more. I don't know what it is about this team. This Michigan team, they are just if you even if they turn the ball over, they're gonna play so efficiently on the other side of the ball. Even with 19 turnovers to Maryland's 6 turnovers, they still had 5 more shots than Maryland in this game overall. 66 shots for Michigan, 61 shots for Maryland. It's spectacular the way they're able to make up for turnovers. It's spectacular how many points they're able to make up for off turnovers. Maryland got 29 points off turnovers in this game, and Michigan was still able to battle back and win it. A big part of that was them going 3 for 3 to end the game. That was absolutely huge for them. There were just so many things in this game that Michigan did well. There were so many things that Michigan didn't do well as well, right? The turnovers being chief among them. They only had 2 blocks. Maryland had 6 blocks in this game. At the beginning of the game, it looked like Maryland was going to be the one down in the paint that was going to be running this game. But points in the paint, Michigan has 44. Maryland only has 30. For Maryland, it was a disappointing finish. Obviously, very frustrated. The coaches, the players. You listen to the post game. Kevin Willard was frustrated. The final play, the breakdown there. Gillespie, he really took that upon himself. And I mean, he should, but at the same time, like, you can't just let a guy run across the middle like that and not react to him. I really just think Trey Donaldson was just so fast with the ball, so determined to get to the basket on the other side that there was hardly anybody that was going to stop him in this one. And also for Maryland, you just can't get out rebounded like that. Michigan had more offensive rebounds than Maryland had defensive rebounds in this game. In fact, they had the same number of offensive rebounds that Maryland had total rebounds in this game. Michigan had 18 offensive rebounds. Maryland only had 14. It was strange. Maryland, 2 bigs like Derek Queen and Julian Reese, you would think they'd do a better job of rebounding, but Vlad Golden, Danny Wolf, they would not be deterred in this one. Danny Wolf himself had as many rebounds as Maryland had defensive rebounds, so just absolutely spectacular performance on the boards from Michigan, being physical, getting what they wanted to get, and the buzzer beater trend continues. They're all 4 of their last 4 losses. All their 4 last losses were buzzer beaters. You think about Michigan State. You think about this game. You think about what was the other game before that? The other 2 were also buzzer beaters. I think Northwestern was the other one, and there was one more before that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But I remember looking back at it. There were 4 buzzer beater performances that won the game for teams playing against Maryland. It was kind of crazy. All right, so let's get to some of the rumor talk and stuff like that. So, let's see what John has to say. Michigan's going to get their butts handed to them by Wisconsin. If they turn the ball over like that, I have a hard time believing that Wisconsin's going to get out rebounded like that, and they are not going to make the most of those opportunities to score. Like, listen, Maryland made the most of those opportunities. I mean, they made a good amount of those opportunities. They had 29 points, but still, like, you need to make more opportunities there. So Derby says Wisconsin is good, but Michigan's bigs are good. Yeah, they're excellent. So it's really going to be huge for them. Now, Nolan Winter, 7-footer, as well as Stephen Corral, they're not nearly as big. They're not nearly as physical as at least Vlad Golden is. Danny Wolf is starting to get more physical, doing a good job there. But overall, like, you get Carter Gilmore down there, like, Carter Gilmore's going to get down there and bang in that paint. I think Nolan Winter is getting more physical and doing a good job there. But overall, like, it's going to be a battle. Stephen Crowl, Vlad Golden, whoever they put on Vlad Golden, he's just been such a monster, such a tear this season for teams to go up against physically. Really, once he found kind of himself, his position for this team, Derby, it's gonna be a street fight, and I like Wisconsin because of the 3-point shooting. I don't think Michigan can keep up with the 3-point shooting of Wisconsin in this one if they're able to do it. So Brian says, "Let's go, Bucky." I think if I was having to pick, I mean, I can't pick a team that turns the ball over that much. Like they didn't turn the ball over that much against Purdue, so maybe it's in there, but 19 turnovers. Like they won this game. Credit to them. They had a really good performance by Trey Donaldson in that on that last play, but I don't know, man. Bucky is just playing so good. Wisconsin's just playing so well right now. Fundamentally, it really seems like this team has found themselves. It's hard for me not to go with Wisconsin. And you guys know, like, I'm trying to be as objective as possible. I'm an Ohio State fan, but, if I thought Michigan was going to win, I'd tell you guys. I don't think so. I think it's going to be Wisconsin. I think the three-point shooting, I think John Tonji, I think that Wisconsin has at least the length to be able to battle with Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf. We'll see what happens, but yeah, it's gonna be a really really fun game tomorrow. I believe 3:30 is when it's supposed to be tomorrow, and then we'll get into Selection Sunday right after that. 3:30, I think it is. Let me check really fast. I have it pulled up right here. Tomorrow they will play. Yes, 3:30 on CBS Paramount Plus. Should be a good time. All right, let's look at Villanova. All right, so Big Ten coaches seem to be interested in this Villanova job. And this is interesting. So I have some notes on this here. Let me kind of go through them. So Pete Thamel, he was on ESPN2 on College Game Day earlier today talking about the job after Kyle Neptune had been let go. Here's quote for quote, quoted what he had to say. He said, Villanova is very well resourced. He then goes on to say, they have plenty of NIL money. They just couldn't figure it out on the floor. Here's a few names that Villanova will be looking at. I think an aspirational name is going to be Marquette's Shaka Smart. Don't expect him to reciprocate interest. He has been very happy at Marquette. Three names that will be in the crosshairs: VCU's Ryan Odom, Maryland's Kevin Willard, and New Mexico's Richard Pitino. Odom is also a Virginia target. All those teams are obviously headed to the NCAA tournament. So look, these searches are going to be awkward. You're going to have teams playing, coaches coaching. We'll see who Villanova can land. Now, if you listened yesterday, I talked about Chris Collins for the Villanova job. I think that Chris Collins' name is still in there, but it sounds like to me that these are the three, that Villanova is considering over Chris Collins right now. Again, if you've watched Big Ten basketball, you know how good of a coach Chris Collins is. You know what he's been able to do, what the talent that he's been able to acquire, that he's been able to develop there at Northwestern. It is impressive what he's done. He's just not a big name because Northwestern isn't a big name. And this season, Northwestern was 17-16 or something like that, 16-15, something like that. Like that's not an overall great record that's going to get you recognition. So Chris Collins isn't going to be a splash higher candidate. Kevin Willard, that would be a splash higher candidate. Ryan Odom, maybe. I think fans would be okay with that. Richard Pitino, I think probably would be, just with kind of how he's resurrected his career a little bit, going to New Mexico there. The name of Pitino obviously carries a lot too, whether positive or negative. But overall, I think the Big East is going to have some desirable head coaching opportunities as teams go on, and I think it has to do with this revenue sharing situation. So hear me out for a second. Revenue sharing is split across sports, right? So when you're in the Big Ten, every single school is going to be spending more revenue sharing on football than they are basketball. It's just simple dollars and cents, right? Simple volume of players, everything like that. I don't know exactly what the NIL situation, disparity is and stuff at Maryland, but Kevin Willard has not been happy with the way that the school treats NIL for football and basketball. So this could kind of lead into some of the issues there, which brings us to the Big East, where many of these Big East teams, they don't have a football program, or if they do have a football program like Villanova, it's not the most resourced, it's not the most invested in, because it's Division II football. Villanova, basketball is their sport. That is what they care about there, and even with a football program, it's going to either be equal or more for basketball with what they're doing there for the revenue sharing. So for a guy like Kevin Willard, who is, probably upset, or at least he, it's been reported that he's upset with the NIL situation at Maryland. You look at that Villanova job, and that's desirable. Remember, last night I told you 2 players on the Villanova team had more NIL money combined than the entire Northwestern roster did combined. Like, that's pretty embarrassing for a Big Ten school, I'm not going to lie, but that's just the situation that we find ourselves in. And this is NIL, these aren't school funds, so maybe that makes a difference. But even if Villanova is only able to spend $10 million on revenue sharing, they could spend 6 of that 10 million on basketball, and that's still more than some Big Ten teams will spend on their revenue sharing on basketball, because they have football programs that make them a lot of money that they care a lot about. I guarantee you Penn State isn't spending more than $4 million NIL, maybe not even $4 million in, not NIL, revenue sharing on basketball. I guarantee you Ohio State isn't spending more than $4 million revenue sharing on basketball. These are programs that care more about football, and at the end of the day, every single program in the Big Ten is going to be spending more money on football than they are basketball. So, in addition to that, Kevin Willard, he knows the Big East. He was there at Seton Hall for a while, did a really good job at Seton Hall. Seton Hall's got some good history. It's not like it's Northwestern or anything like that, but still, that's a program that, you don't get the right coach in there, and they could not do some good things. But you could go from Seton Hall to Maryland to Villanova. Coaches look at this Villanova job like one of the best in the country. Some of them do. I mean, you talk to them and you figure out what they value, and NIL, revenue sharing, that kind of stuff. Like, Villanova is a highly coveted job. Now, it's not highly enough for like Tom Izzo to leave Michigan State, but it is coveted enough for a program to lose their head coach in a Northwestern, possibly a Maryland, to go from there. It is a possibility that Kevin Willard's agent is just doing a really good job putting his name in there, trying to get him some extra money, an extension, something like that, which, Kevin Willard probably deserves something like that after the season with what he was able to do, getting Derek Queen in there, assembling this roster and getting his guys together. But overall, like, the conference competition, is also going to be a big reason why so many coaches are, might be willing to jump from the Big Ten to the Big East, because, I mean, you listen to a press conference, every single coach is talking about the competition in this conference, and fans expect more than that, right? Fans expect to go to the NCAA tournament and win a game or two. That's why Ohio State fans are so mad. That's why Indiana is firing, not firing, he's retiring, but it's basically a firing, Mike Woodson. Like, that's why a lot of these coaches are being let go or having to move on. Ben Johnson, like, because they do not have this type of success that the fans warrant as actual success. And for coaches in the Big Ten, that's going to be hard to manage those expectations with how good the conference is overall. Now, this would be one of the upsides to expanding the NCAA tournament. I'm not in favor of that. I get why some people are. Overall, this would be a pro in that column, because the Big Ten only getting 8 teams in the NCAA tournament, like, that's just not right. The Big Ten is too good of a conference for them to get 8 and the Mountain West to get 4. No disrespect to the Mountain West. The Mountain West has some good basketball teams in it, but if Boise State, and we'll talk about this in a minute, if Boise State gets in over Indiana, that's just wrong. That is just wrong. If Boise State gets in over Indiana. Indiana played a heck of a schedule. Indiana didn't lose a single game that wasn't a quad 1 game. Indiana gave, teams really good games this season. If a team like Boise State makes it in over Indiana, coaches are going to be completely justified in saying, we don't want to coach in the Big Ten. We're going to go to this other conference, because the NCAA tournament is trying to do too much with, putting too many teams from different conferences in the tournament, when in reality, they just need to take the best teams. Look at me. I sound like an SEC football player. Strength of schedule matters. I'm not trying to sound like that. I'm just saying, like, that is going to be the reality, is that coaches are going to get upset and leave and go elsewhere, the Big East, the Big 12, whatever it might be, because there is more opportunity for you excuse me, to get into the NCAA tournament and to accomplish things, have that opportunity at the very least to accomplish things. You win the NIT, you win the crown this year, fans aren't going to think about that. Nobody's going to say, oh, they won the crown, we can't fire them. Nobody's going to say that. Like, it's fun to go do that, and it's fun to continue to watch your team, but it's just like how, like, nobody in football says, oh, they won the Gator Bowl, so we have to keep them around. Like, that's what these NIT and crown tournaments are to a lot of these, to a lot of fans. Maybe not to you personally, but to a lot of fans, that's what they kind of become. And to a lot of these coaches and players, that's kind of what they become too. So you're going to get a lot of players probably opt out of some of these tournaments. And, it's going to be bare bones for some of these teams. I think you have to have a roster of at least 7 players to participate. Some of these Big Ten teams might not even have 7 scholarship players on their team to be able to participate. That's just the way it is because they're going to be going out looking for new talent. They're going to be losing their talent to other teams. It is the way it is. And we can get into the discussion. This is probably for another podcast, but like the Big Ten and the SEC want more control in basketball because they don't want to lose their head coaches. They know they have really good head coaches, and they're going to continue to get really good head coaches with how much they pay. But there is an advantage to the Big East right now where, like I talked about before, they don't have as much revenue sharing to split with football as other schools do. They might not have as much revenue sharing, period, but they are not going to have to distribute that as much as a Big Ten school does, who, either cares about football or is being told football is more important than the other one. So those are my thoughts there on Villanova and everything. I guess I should say, like Chris Collins is still in it. I don't think he's out of it by any means for this Villanova job. Like I said, I just think these other 3 guys are the names that they're looking at the most, or they got leaked to Pete Thamel for whatever reason. Like Chris Collins is still in it for the job though. Brian says, I think the lesser tournaments now serve as a place to get your freshmen some game reps before next year. Yeah, if your freshmen stick around, yeah, for sure. That could be super helpful for you if your freshmen stick around. Hopefully they do. I hope they do. But we'll have to see. And I don't even know like how many freshmen that didn't get a chance to play at all are going to even play next year with the transfer portal and what it is. Like you look at college football now, like if you paying a guy big money to come in college football now as a freshman, like they're getting on the field and they're playing. It's kind of what it is in basketball too. Like the developmental 5-star is not as much of a thing nowadays as it once was before. Like I know Ohio State fans, I mean, I was upset about, how much money Aaron Bradshaw made through NIL. He made, over $1 million to come to Ohio State. Played like crap, right? Now, you could use in the past the excuse of, well, he's a freshman, he's developing, stuff like that. You can't use that excuse anymore when the guy's getting paid a bunch of money. You can't use that excuse with the fans. You can't use that excuse with the NIL collective. Like, that's just the way it is. So, Brian, I think you make a good point there with the freshmen if they have the opportunity to play at some point. But I also think if you weren't playing at all as a freshman, this is college basketball now where freshmen are making a bunch of money, like, and you can go in and bring somebody else in. You might just not play all that much on that team and you might move on and play someplace else. I don't know. That's probably a bigger conversation. Thanks for making that point though, Brian. I appreciate it. All right. One more thing and then we'll get to the Big Ten bubble teams. The Ben McCollum dilemma. So I posted a meme on, the Twitter, the Big Ten Huddle Twitter account. I think it was yesterday, of that guy from the OxyClean, and there's a leak, and he sticks the tape on it to stop the leak. And I said, Big Ten head coaching openings, Big Ten head coaching hot board, and then slap Ben McCollum's name on it. Because that's kind of what it seemed like. It's like every single Big Ten opening, head coach opening has had Ben McCollum's name on it. Well, the 2 that Ben McCollum's name seem to be the highest on right now are Indiana and Iowa. So Indiana and Iowa kind of going after Ben McCollum right now, and I think Iowa should go after Darren DeVries, and I think they would rather have Darren DeVries, but I don't know if that's going to happen. More on that in a second. Ben McCollum seems to be the number 1 option for Indiana right now. It seems like it's down to him, Brad Brunell from Clemson, and then the third name, actually, I mean, I hinted this to you guys, not just the Villanova job, but Chris Collins for the Indiana job. He seems to be up there for that as well. If Indiana could have more options than Ben McCollum. I don't know if I don't think Iowa has more options than Ben McCollum. They have Chris Jans, I think it is, at Mississippi State, but bringing him in, like he's gonna have a big buyout. Well, he might. I don't know. I didn't look up his buyout. I apologize, but I know Darren DeVry's buyout at West Virginia right now. It's like $4 million. Well, there's talk inside that Iowa doesn't know if they can pay that buyout. After paying Fran's buyout, they don't know if they can pay Darren DeVries the money that he needs and the buyout and revenue share and get the NIL resources up. And right now, if you're Darren DeVries, there's no way you touch this Iowa job if Iowa can't hold on to some of its best players. Owen Freeman just entered the transfer portal today. Owen Freeman put a do not contact tag on himself. A lot of people think that means like, oh, he already knows where he's going. It can mean that, but it can also mean that Owen Freeman knows that he is going to be a highly coveted transfer. I think John L. Davis might have done the same thing last year. Like he knows he's going to be a highly coveted transfer, and so instead of getting offers from a bunch of teams, like he's going to go to those teams and say, what's your offer? And apparently one of those teams that he's a little bit interested in, or at least they're interested in him, however I got tipped to Joe Tipton, is Michigan, is one of those teams that's up there. So that doesn't mean he's going to Michigan, because like I said, the do not contact tag can mean, oh, I'm going there. I already have a place. I'm going there for sure. It can also just mean like, I don't want to entertain a bunch of offers from all these places I know I'm not going to go to. So apparently his names up there right now are like Arkansas, Creighton, and Michigan, and there's another, I think Tennessee might have been the other one up there. And so those are big names for a guy, especially NIL wise as well. At least Arkansas, Michigan, and Tennessee. I don't really know much about Creighton's their NIL situation, but revenue sharing, they're going to get more money focused to that than probably some other Big Ten teams are. And then on top of that, like Josh Dix, he could be on his way out soon too. We talked about him a little bit in the last episode. Josh Dix, he's already apparently receiving some interest from Creighton, Alabama, Illinois, and Tennessee as early names to know. So if you're going to lose those two guys and you're not going to have the NIL that makes Darren DeVries comfortable, that means you're probably going to have to move on to your second option, which is Ben McCollum. Well, Ben McCollum right now, like I said, is the first option for Indiana. If Indiana doesn't get Ben McCollum, which they probably should because Indiana is going to be able to pay him more, but Ben McCollum is also from Illinois. So as far as I'm concerned, like that's kind of the catch-22 there, right? Is like Indiana's probably going to be able to offer more money if they want him that bad. And that's the if, because Indiana does have other options as well. Like I said, Brad Burnell. I don't think Brad Burnell is going to come though. It sounds like Clemson's working on an extension with him to really get him paid. So it sounds like he's probably going to be out. But then your third option, Chris Collins, could be there as well. And then John brings up the other option that I was going to bring up. That's kind of like the secret name. There's been some people talking about behind the scenes, like there's a name that we don't really want out there yet, and you don't want him out there because he doesn't have the highest moral character, which is Will Wade. Will Wade is another one who would be fantastic for this Indiana job. I mean, just absolutely fantastic. Yeah, the moral issue, stuff like that, like I get that, but at a certain point, and I said this early on with the Indiana job, I said at a certain point, Indiana, not so much the fans, but the administration needs to figure out, what do you want? Do you want a team that's going to win, that has a higher percentage chance of doing that, and you're going to hire a guy who is the right guy for that job? Or do you want to kind of keep trying to hire good guys and hope they work out? I think Indiana fans want to win. And I think the Indiana administration knows that. So as far as I'm concerned, like Will Wade is probably your best option for that. Chris Collins is the clean guy who's going to be able to come in and look good. He's not going to really splash for the fans, though. I think he could win over the fans if they make the NCAA tournament in their first year, right? I mean, this is Chris Collins who's gotten second and third in the Big Ten before at Northwestern. Like, I don't think people realize how bad of a basketball program Northwestern has been in the past. But make no mistake, Northwestern is going to do everything they possibly can to hold on to Chris Collins because they know how good of a coach he is and they know how big he is. So that super secret name they keep talking about, I think it's Will Wade. John, I don't know where you heard that name from. I don't know if you got on like 24/7 on 3 or something like that. I know that they've mentioned that name a few times there. But at least from talking to some of the people that I know, there is a super secret name that nobody wants to say behind the scenes. I think that dude is Will Wade. I think Will Wade would be a fantastic addition for Indiana. Again, not saying Ben McCollum will be bad. I do not think Ben McCollum would be bad for any team that hires him. He seems like a really good head coach. Seems like he'd do a really good job. But I think there would be an adjustment period that I think Iowa would be okay with. Like, I think Iowa would get it. I don't think Indiana would be okay with it. I don't think Indiana is willing to go through the adjustment period that would be needed just because they just had Archie. They just had Mike Woodson. Like, you're going to want a coach that comes in there and, not Dusty May it and go and try to, nearly win the conference, but at the very least be competitive and look like a team that plays hard, that plays well enough to, to kind of give people the confidence they need in the basketball program. All right, what's John saying here? He says, I'd rather have someone who does something that's legal now in college sports. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too. Like, can people really come at you for you did something that was illegal before, but it's legal now? Like, yeah, I mean they can, but at the same time, it's like, but it's okay now. So yeah, I think, I mean, obviously this is different than the Chris Beard situation. That's completely different. He also says, I heard that Wade is holding out for a bigger resource job at Indiana. Fits that specific bill. There's other big resource job openings too. Yeah, Villanova's out there, but like I said, Villanova has some other, different people on it. And I know what people say, like, oh, they're not as resource as us. Well, just cite what I said about the Big East and the Big Ten type of stuff. Virginia, they're out there as well. Like, there could be some other bigger jobs opening up. I don't have all of them made up off the top of my head, but Indiana would definitely be a resource job out there that he would go for. So I don't know how this is going to play out. Sounds like Ben McCollum is the guy right now for Indiana, but Iowa comes in. Maybe they're okay with letting Ben McCollum walk, so they don't offer him as much, and maybe Iowa swoops in with a similar offer. And the NIL is not so much a question for Ben McCollum as it was for Darren DeVries. Ben McCollum can bring some guys with him from Drake. Like, I don't know. That's going to be so crazy how that works out. And plus, to go from run and gun like Iowa is to, ball control, possession, slow down the clock type of stuff, that's going to be pretty crazy to think about. So that is the Ben McCollum dilemma. It's quite the dilemma right now for the Big Ten. Iowa, Indiana specifically. I know Minnesota was kind of mentioning his name at some point. I don't really think anything can change in these coaching situations, but I don't really think he's super involved with Minnesota. I think that was, one that maybe was I don't know about a dream. I don't want to say that. That's disrespectful to Minnesota, but one they were just kind of late to the party on a little bit. All right, let's move on. All right, final discussion here. The bubble team. So Indiana fans, we're going to stick with you a little bit. Actually, you know what? I need a drink. We'll be right back. I'm going to do a CBB Analytics ad, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about the bubble teams. CBB Analytics isn't just another stat site. It's your ultimate destination for in-depth college basketball analysis used by fans and even the coaches. It has comprehensive stats for men's and women's basketball across Division 1 through 3, dating all the way back to 2018. From shooting percentage to game recap, CBB Analytics has it all. Try CBB Analytics for free or pay for a tier to take your basketball knowledge to the next level. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, if you are watching, you can see I have some resumes pulled up here next to me. We're going to do a little bit of resume comparing for the Big Ten, specifically Indiana. Ohio State's in there as well because they actually moved up to Joe Lunardi's last 4 in earlier today. So I think, they're at least worthy of comparing resume of, but I got to be honest, I don't think Ohio State's going to make it to the NCAA tournament. So let's compare some of these resumes a little bit. I want to start off by saying, like I said, Ohio State and Indiana both being considered right now. Unfortunately for Indiana, they actually got moved out of the of Joe Lunardi's bracketology. But I gotta be honest, guys. Like, I am very skeptical of people who update their bracketology, multiple times during the day. And I say that because, like, I've talked about it with Jason, and I know people don't really tend to believe me because they get caught up in everything. Like, they kind of believe me in the beginning, but then all the tournaments happen. They're like, but look at this, look at what's happening. And like, conference tournaments just don't change bracketology all that much. Like, for the most part, these NCAA committee, selectors come in and they know what teams, for the most part, they want to add and not add into the NCAA tournament. You might be able to do something here and there. Like, I do think Ohio State would have been much better suited if they could have beat Iowa, but that was primarily because of Ohio State's record. Ohio State would have ended with a record of 18-15 if they beat Iowa. If they would have beat Illinois, they would have been 19-15, and that would have looked a whole lot better. But you're going to try and put a team in Ohio State that is 17-15 into the NCAA tournament. Like, your records don't tell the entire story of how good a team is. But you can't put a team that's 17-15 into the NCAA tournament. The last time I remember that happening was Michigan in 2022, I believe it was. They were like 17-14 and got into the NCAA tournament. Now they did advance to the Sweet 16 that year, but still, like, I remember some of the uproar of that, of like, why is this Michigan team getting in there, and Juwan Howard and yada yada yada. Like, they did succeed, so maybe that helps Ohio State here. Like, Ohio State, I'm still not saying it's completely out. I know there's some Buckeye fans that are like, no way, Ohio State doesn't deserve to be in it, yada, yada, yada. Like, you look at the other teams that are around them: North Carolina 22-13, Texas 19-15, Boise State 23-19, like 23-9. I get it, but like, look at that out-of-conference strength of schedule for some of these ones. Like, San Diego State, 7th. That's the reason why San Diego State is going to get in there. North Carolina, 5th. Like, people keep referencing the quad one win for North Carolina, and I get that. But the committee wants to reward out-of-conference strength of schedule. And right now, North Carolina has the best one of these bubble teams. And so that's probably one of the reasons why, if they do get in, you're going to see them get in there. That's an area where Indiana fans find themselves most worried, because in this scenario, they have the third lowest of these 8 teams, that being North Carolina, Texas, Ohio State, Boise State, Xavier, Vanderbilt, San Diego State, and Indiana. They have the third lowest out-of-conference strength of schedule. Now, for Indiana, it's all good because your strength of schedule increases to 30th overall because you played in the Big Ten. Vanderbilt, 24th because they were in the SEC. Ohio State, 19th. Texas, 16th. Like, it's kind of crazy that Ohio State's out-of-conference strength of schedule was 41st. They end with a strength of schedule of 19th. The SEC is so highly regarded right now that Texas plays an out-of-conference strength of schedule of 285, but they end with a strength of schedule of 16. Now, the reason why I'm kind of going different on this, and if you've watched the conversations with me and Jason, you know that, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself to you, but like, the committee wants, interesting basketball games to be played in November and December in the out-of-conference, right? Like, they don't want their sport to be resigned to, oh, I'll check in January after football is over. No, they want big games, big things happening in November and December. And another reason why they want that is because they want teams to actually think the entire season matters. So that way you can't just get hot in the last week or two of the season and then have a good tournament and boom, we're in. Right? They want to see work throughout the entire season to make that happen. So, San Diego State, their strength of schedule, out-of-conference strength of schedule was 7. Their overall strength of schedule, 63. North Carolina, out-of-conference strength of schedule, 5th. But man, the ACC was so down this year, it really hurt them. Their strength of schedule overall, 42nd. You can look at some of these home splits as well. The team with the best home record here looks like that was Xavier, 15-2, but they only had one quad one win. Like, I look at the 2 main numbers I look at, and if I'm right, Ohio State gets in. I don't think that actually happens because of the record. And I think that's the biggest thing against Ohio State. If they decide to just completely disregard the record, which like maybe that happens, I don't think it would. I remember Jason saying like half of the committee, it's their first year this year. So maybe they just like forge their own path and do something different. I don't know. But when you look at that record for Ohio State, like that's the trump card that keeps them out. If it wasn't for that record, if they were 18-14, Ohio State would be in because they have 6 quad one wins and they have an out of conference strength of schedule in the top 50. Like once you get into that 300 range, like Vanderbilt is, that's where it really gets tricky. Now Vanderbilt did go 5-9, but man, is it hard to put in a team in North Carolina that's 1-12. Man, is it hard to put in a team in Boise State that's 3-5. Is it hard to put in a team like Xavier who was 1-9 in quad one games? In addition to that, like Ohio State has a number of quad two losses. Boise State, they have as many quad 2, 3, and 4 losses combined as Ohio State has quad 2 losses overall, 4. And that's the hard part with Boise State is they lost that quad 4 game. Like we talk about we talk about the record being a thing that could keep Ohio State out. That quad 4 loss, which actually ended up to be Boston College, who's in the ACC, unfortunately, that quad 4 loss could be kind of what keeps Boise State out here. Really, really interesting. I do think the other thing Ohio State has for them is that they did kind of have some sickness issues when they played Northwestern and when they played UCLA earlier this year as well. So I don't know. Like I don't want to say Ohio State's in because that sounds crazy, and I'm not going to say they're in. But if Ohio State gets in on Sunday, I would not be totally shocked because think about it this way as well. The Big Ten, like I talked about, is the second best conference in the country this year. There's no doubt about it. The Big 12 is very close behind them. They did a good job this season. The Big East has been good this season as well, but they've also had some stinker teams. Overall, like the SEC, number 1, the Big Ten is right there behind them at number 2. To only give the Big Ten 8 bids at the end of the day, like you're going to give the Mountain West 4, but you're going to give the Big Ten 8, like that just doesn't sit right with me. And I don't think that would sit right with the committee in a lot of ways too. It would not surprise me if you see both Ohio State and Indiana in playing games for, as those 11 seeds playing opposite playing games. I'm not going to predict that it happens, but it would not surprise me at all. Indiana, I think, is definitely in. Indiana, 19-13, 4 quad 1 wins, not a single loss outside of the quad 1. Every single one of those losses came to a quad 1 team. That speaks of getting the job done, doing what you're supposed to do. But the problem with Indiana is they're 54th in net. They're 47th in KenPom. They're 52nd in BPI. Like these numbers are not great. Historically, if you want to get into the tournament, you have to be top 45 in net, top 50 in net. Like those are really the safe places. For Indiana being 54th, like that's the really, really hard part. So if I had to make a guess here at the end of the day, I think they're probably going to give one Mountain West team and the rest to Big Ten and SEC teams. I think you're going to see Indiana, Texas, I guess I should have said Big East. Indiana, Texas, San Diego State, and either Xavier or Vanderbilt. I don't think you're going to get Ohio State. I don't think it'd be crazy if you got Ohio State, but I don't think you're going to get Ohio State. I think North Carolina, they're going to get a lot of attention with that net the way it is and the out of conference schedule and stuff like that. So maybe North Carolina does end up getting in, but again, like one quad 1 win, and that's the issue that Xavier has too. Only one quad 1 win. Like, did I say Xavier? I meant to say North Carolina. Vanderbilt, North Carolina, San Diego State, Indiana, Texas. Like, it's either going to be North Carolina, Vanderbilt. It's going to be one of those two scenarios. So, truthfully, Ohio State has had a chance if they beat Iowa. They didn't get it happen. They still have a chance now, but it's very, very slim. Boise State, I don't think they can make it in with that quad 4 loss. Indiana having 0 losses in the quad 2 or above is absolutely huge for them. And just know, like, all this movement right now and everything, it's just what bracketologists do. and it's one of the reasons why I bring Jason on, because Jason doesn't do that kind of stuff to a high extent. Now he does some of it because I think it's just natural, but like the conference tournaments do not matter as much as some people give them credit to matter for. A lot of these NCAA tournament brackets go in on Friday. Like a lot of those guys, they send these in on Friday because they have to get them in there. ESPN has to get everything together for it. Like ESPN can't just hit a button on Sunday and put everything together, right? And so it's kind of a crazy situation, but that's the way I see it. I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts on it. Some of you guys have some comments up there. Derby says Miami of Ohio almost was a bid stealer, but Akron pulled out the victory. You best believe I'm gonna be rooting for Akron. In there. That's the one I got right now, Derby. Yeah, great job. The Ohio podcast. Eric, thanks for being here, man. He says, no way Ohio State doesn't deserve to be in, yada, yada, yada. Listen, I think Ohio State is like, I think they did enough to get in, but I think they also did enough to get out. Like, that's the biggest dilemma for Ohio State. Ohio State played a tough enough schedule to get in, but they didn't win enough games. Ohio State won enough quad one games to get in, but they lost too many quad two games. Like, it seems like everything that Ohio State has, where it's like, oh, they deserve to be in because they beat Kentucky, but they lost terribly to Northwestern. Oh, they deserve to be in because they beat Purdue, but they barely beat Minnesota. Like, yeah, sure, they beat them. Like, there are losses on there. Like, they lost to Iowa. They're at the end 5-7 to end the year. Like, if all Ohio State had to be was 3-3 at one point in the year. That Michigan game, all they had to be was 3-3, and then from there, instead of going 3-3, look at this here. We were saying all Ohio State had to do was go 3-3. They lost to Michigan, lost to Northwestern, lost to UCLA, beat USC, beat Nebraska, lost to Indiana. Instead of going 3-3, they went 2-4. Made it really, really difficult for them. Lost to Iowa. That's another quad two loss on their resume because it was a neutral floor. Just heartbreaking for Buckeye fans this year. Indiana beat Ohio State head to head twice. Yep. And that's the reason why, like, Indiana is absolutely going to get in before Ohio State does. Like, there is not a scenario where Ohio State makes it in and Indiana doesn't. Even though Ohio State has some of the better stuff, like it's still that way. John said, saw Ant post a clip on Twitter from someone on TV saying the Big Ten could have double-digit bids this year. Yeah, I saw that as well. I didn't know who the guy was, but I mean, like, that's kind of the stuff I'm talking about a little bit, where it's like there are some people, especially on the committee, I'm sure, that are like, can we really not give this team like double-digit bids, like, or this conference double-digit bids? Like, we're really going to give them 8 and give 4 to the Mountain West? No, no offense to the Mountain West, but like, I don't know, like what kind of precedent does that set for teams who have a good out of conference schedule and then, don't make it in? Ohio State, I can guarantee you Ohio State will never ever schedule an out of conference that hard again if they don't get in this year. Guarantee you they will not. Because it's not worth it. The Big Ten is too difficult. The SEC this year is too difficult for those teams to do that. And if you don't have the SEC and the Big Ten going out there and scheduling against each other, you're going to get Vanderbilt versus Boston College. Who's watching that? Like, nobody is watching that game. You could either get Ohio State or not Ohio State. That they're not as big of a name brand. I mean, they are a name brand for football and stuff like that, and a brand as a college overall. But like in terms of basketball, like you're not gonna get Michigan. Nah, they would do it. I mean, sure, Michigan. You're not gonna get Michigan versus name your SEC. Like, you're not gonna get Michigan versus Florida out there. You're not gonna get some of these Big Ten teams going out there. We've already seen the Big Ten do this in football. Look at the Big Ten out of conference schedule in football this year. It's non-existent because the Big Ten knows how difficult it is in conference right now in basketball, and how if you lose that out of conference game, it is more against you than if you win it is for you, right? Because that's how crazy it is in everything right now. If a team doesn't have national recognition, you simply don't get that much credit for it. Derby said, How many possible bid stealer attorneys are left tomorrow? Great question. Let's look at, instead of me trying to guess off the top of my head, let's just look overall Division One games for tomorrow. George Mason would be a bid stealer over VCU. UAB would be a bid stealer over Memphis. So those are probably your two games you're looking for most if you're an Indiana fan. John, correct me if I'm wrong. I know you follow this stuff, but I think those are the two that you're going to be following the most if you're an Indiana fan, and to some extent as an Ohio State fan as well. But yeah, Indiana fans, your rooting interest tomorrow will be VCU, so that way they make it in as they should, and Memphis makes it in as they should, as the 16 team, and UAB gets out. So yeah, John says Memphis has to win their conference tourney. Has to. Yeah. I think VCU is probably in that same scenario as well, but yeah, they have to. So all right. John also said we saw Auburn play Indiana a few years ago. Auburn won by 30. Yeah, we saw Auburn play Ohio State this year. They won by 30 as well. So Fire Melon Gaming, that's a cool name. Said, I wonder what the chances UNC gets in is. Yeah, that I tell you, like that's just the crazy thing right now with UNC, because that out of conference schedule, fifth, strength of schedule overall, 42nd. Like, to me, not putting a team in that had an out of conference strength of schedule in the top 5 that has a net rating of 36. I don't think you can do that. Like, I think they have to put North Carolina in for their own reasoning of like trying to make sure teams play good out of conference schedules and stuff. Maybe they don't deserve to be in as much as another team, but I really, really think that the committee weighs that out of conference strength of schedule pretty heavily, and some of them might weigh that more heavily than like a quad 1 record, 1-12 against quad 1. And North Carolina's in a similar boat to Indiana. They have one quad 3 loss, and that's their only loss outside of quad 1. But I just think that record of Indiana is so impressive to have all of your losses in the quad 1. You did not get a single loss outside of the quad 1. I think that's going to be a big thing that gets them in, and also a top 30 overall strength of schedule is huge. So he says, I hope I can't go through Duke fans. Yeah. Hey, almost beat Duke today. I tell you what, that'd put them in right away. You know, I'm over here talking about how conference tournament games don't matter. You beat Duke, you're in. What was that? That was such a crazy thing. The guy, what did he do? Like flinch, stepped over the line and everything. I didn't see it well enough to really be able to talk about it too much, but I saw the clips of it. What a heartbreaker. What a heartbreaker for North Carolina. So, all right, everybody. I think that's all I got tonight. So really appreciate all of you. Yeah, lane violation. That's what it was. Really appreciate you being here tonight. Big Ten After Dark. You can catch us again 8 o'clock tomorrow. I will have Burke with me, so you won't just be hearing me all by myself. We will come on live at 8 o'clock Eastern time. We will talk about the game that happens, the championship game. We'll probably recap that a little bit, not talk about it too much. The big thing we want to get to is the NCAA tournament bracket. We are going to give our instant reaction to the bracket, give our instant reaction picking games in the bracket. It's not going to be like anything super in depth. So if you're looking for some place where you're going to get like big numbers and like a cheat code to get your bracket filled out, it's not going to be that. This is going to be more than anything vibes, me and Burke just having a good time, like you guys hanging out with us. A fun listen on podcast afterward of just us kind of going through it all. So John said, I can't wait to make a bunch of brackets and get none of them right. I did excuse me. Sorry. I did a thing. Actually, you can go look over it on my TikTok for it, where I figured out the best bracket every single year from like 2016 to 2022, and it was crazy how many of those brackets were people that just like, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing, I just filled out a bracket, or like, yeah, my friend needed one more person for the bracket challenge and I filled it out. Like absolutely incredible. Go over to my TikTok at the Big Ten Huddle, and they're all on there. You can figure them out. I think I have one of them. I have one of them pinned, and then it's connected to a playlist, so you should be able to watch all of them there. But actually, now that I think about it, I'm probably gonna go watch all of those tonight because those were really, really fun to make, and maybe I'll make another one. Who knows? I don't have time for it. I don't have time to make another one. All right, everybody. Appreciate you being here. See you tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Me and Burke. Have a good one.